right, it's JPEG Raw, show number 186 on November 15th. I think this is the last one of November, Tim. This is our last one we're doing this month before we go head into the December. So we have a couple of things to go over, and then we'll get right into tonight's topic. And the first thing I want to go over is this month's photo contest. Let me pull that up real quick here. The best way to get it, of course, where is that, is to join our Facebook group and go over here. And at the top of the group, we have the contest posted. And this month was that Pareidolia? Is that what that's called, Tim? I think.
Yeah, I think that's how we said we were going to pronounce it.
Yeah, okay, that's how I'm going to pronounce it.
I don't think either of us knew how to pronounce it last week.
That's how I'm going to pronounce it. And then basically it is where you see faces or something like that in objects where it doesn't appear. Like in this example I'm showing you from Millen. Millen's already submitted an image. This is a face he saw in his coffee. So very interesting. Different than anything we've ever done in our contest before. So do that. If you don't want...
Have you submitted a picture yet?
Not yet, but I'm going to. I'm looking everywhere I go to find one.
I've been looking too, and you know, because we both committed to it this month.
We did, and things like this little well, hold on, I got to get it where you can see me. Things like this little Amazon thing don't count. That doesn't count.
Purposely.
That doesn't count. If you don't want to join our Facebook group, you can always just enter through the website jpegraw.com and then go over to photo contest and photo contest entry, and then right there you just enter your information and upload your photo, and that's all there is to it.
And when you upload the photo, if you want to give a little background information into it as well, a lot of times that helps. Maybe not so much with what we're doing this month, but a lot of times we look at that, so when we're discussing it the following month, we talk about it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep, I forgot to mention that. And speaking of the contest, at the end of this, we're going to reveal the winner of the October contest, the three finalists, and the winner of the October contest. But okay, so enough of that. We'll do all the rest of the stuff at the end of the show. Let's get right to it with tonight's guest, Kat Forder. Did I say that right? Awesome.
Yeah.
I knew I shouldn't be able to mess up Kat, and I was hoping I got the last name right. So Kat's here to talk to us tonight about what has been, in our group at least, the most controversial subject. Every time somebody has posted about it, we've had to close the thread because it's so controversial. And I don't understand why it's this controversial, but you never know what's going to be controversial. We're going to go over that, and that is taking photos on train tracks and take around trains and that kind of stuff. So we're going to go over that. Before we do, I want to introduce Kat a little bit and have Kat tell us a little bit about what she does, because your life is not just talking about train track photography, right?
Thank goodness. I don't need any more drama in my life.
Yep.
I am primarily a studio photographer these days. I began as a photojournalist in a small town and worked weddings for a while before I could afford my studio, and now focus a lot on children and babies. And the studio is actually the whole reason I had to learn about train tracks and all the regulations around that. So much of my work personally is done in studio. The other photographers that work for me, often they're on location and out and about. And of course, all of our clients often comment on the proximity of the railroad tracks near our studio too. And that's kind of what catapulted us and our studio into having to learn about train track photography and the rules and regulations and all that safety information around that.
Yep. And you even have here on your page, we had it pulled up just a second ago, some photos of your studio, which looks gorgeous.
Thank you.
Love your studio. So if you want to see more about that and some of Kat's photos that she has over there, she has a lot of work that she's put up there. I think you even post down here 25,000 images last year. You've been doing this for 10 years at least. 800 beautiful families, and loving what I do 100%. I love your website, and that website is easy to remember. katforder.com, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you can poke around the pictures of the studio too. It's actually a B&O Railroad historic depot. It was the first B&O Railroad depot in Maryland, the building itself, and it's still standing. It's been through a couple accidents and fires and stuff like that, but part of the reason the studio is so gorgeous is because it's that historic original brick and tin ceilings and all that sort of stuff. So that's why we love it.
Oh, here it is. I remember I saw it somewhere. So down on the information page, then you have some photos of your studio here. We're looking at a few of them here.
So bit of cool stuff there. That studio space that you see with that first image, that's where the signalman used to sit. The Morse code and
wow.
The lineman would sit there and look out the window because the train track passes literally right by that window there. And they would send the Morse code signal down the line to the next city where passengers would embark on them and let them know if the train was on time.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. We found it through the historic archives close by the studio there. They let us know the history of the building.
What a find.
I was just going to ask you, how'd you find out the information?
Yeah, it was. It's a small little town that we're in. So the historic organization, when they realized that there was somebody occupying the building kind of thing, they stopped and said, "Hey, did you know?" And they happened to have pictures. They actually had pictures. There's a long trestle table that's in that one section of the studio, and you could see all the equipment and see the guys there working to send the signal. It's kind of cool.
That is cool.
That is awesome. You're also, in addition to your business that you run and being involved in Operation Lifesavers, which we'll talk about here in just a second, you also are involved in at least two other organizations, right? The Now Lay Me Down to Sleep and the Red Thread Sessions. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Red Thread. Yes, absolutely. So Now Lay Me Down to Sleep is a set of international volunteers who are mobilized during times of need for families who will have their first and last family portrait sessions in the hospital after the birth of their little one. So these are portrait sessions that are very emotional, very, very gut-wrenching, both for the photographer and for the families, of course. And they are probably among the most treasured possessions of these families. So we go on location into hospitals, into NICUs. We have great working relationships locally here with our specialists in our hospitals. Sometimes we're right there during birth. Sometimes we're there afterwards. And then the Red Thread sessions, we find it really important in our studio to kind of give back and contribute to our community that we're in. Red Thread sessions provide sessions for families who are built through adoption. So they may have a little one that comes that isn't quite the newborn stage anymore.
Right.
Or they may be a little older and celebrate the new family with portraits for their wall, because it's very important for children's self-esteem to be able to see themselves as part of a family unit. And one way to do that, of course, is to have family portraits on the wall. Awesome.
So photographers can donate their time or volunteer for both of these organizations if they want?
Absolutely. Both organizations have a little bit of a vetting process. They want to make sure that you're competent and able to do it. Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep is much more rigorous. It has training that you have to go through and everything, because it is a little bit more than just, showing up with your camera. But it's very comprehensive, very detailed. And I'm happy to chat with anybody who's interested and explain, the behind the scenes information on both the organizations if you're interested.
I gotta tell you, ever since I became a father, which was quite a long time ago at this stage, anything involving kids, I'm much more emotional about. And just looking at this site and looking at these photos, and just, I get the feel for it. And it was a little emotional for me just looking at this stuff, and thinking about what the family is going through with that. And what that photo must mean to them, over the years and at the moment too. It's something special for the photographer to be involved in that, and for the family to have that for the rest of their life.
It only increases in value for the families themselves. It's something they can never ever repeat. You talk about things you can never do again. That's that's one of them. You can never do that again.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, I don't want to talk too much about that because I don't want to get too emotional tonight.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to and I should say, thank you, Kat, for volunteering your time for these two awesome organizations, and doing that. That's awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So what we want to talk to you about tonight is your involvement in something called Operation Lifesaver. Can you tell us, how did you get involved with Operation Lifesaver, and what do they do?
So Operation Lifesaver is a mix of volunteers as well as rail company folks who are particularly keen on educating everybody else about rail safety in a variety of different ways. Everything from education about the signage and proper rail crossings, and just overall rail safety, conducting yourself properly around the railroads, not passing barriers, things like that. All of the education campaigns that you see in schools, and sometimes of the viral videos you see on Facebook and things like that. There's been a few of those passed around too. Most of those, Operation Lifesaver has had a hand in somehow. They've either funded it or come up with it themselves. So they have a national conference. They are connected with every rail company in the country, and of course they're connected with their counterparts internationally too. So it's a great education resource.
Okay. Question out in chat is: are you an OLAV, Operation Lifesaver Authorized Approved Volunteer?
I do not think so. No, I have inquired about being so, and it's been a few weeks actually. I should follow up with Libby and find out.
I do know that when I contacted them, they said, "Oh, the person you've got to talk to is Kat. She's
Yes.
very knowledgeable about this and does a lot of these speeches all over the country or wherever you do them. I don't know, but they highly recommended that we talk to you."
They're probably asking about being an official OLV volunteer or OLI volunteer, in part because those folks can be sponsored by OLI to go out and speak elsewhere. So they'll accept speaking invitations. Since my career is as a photographer, first and foremost, not as a public speaker, it's not something that I'm necessarily looking to do as a full-time career.
You already have that. Yeah,
I've got enough on my plate. No, I was the guest speaker for OLI, kind of representing photographers at their national conference in Texas this spring. So they wanted to kind of hear from all the stakeholders, people who they had Hollywood stunt execs there at the conference as well. I was on a panel with a couple of the stunt organizers who look after creating those train scenes, the video train scenes for movies and everything, for the blockbusters. So OLI is very interested, and the railroads themselves, of course, are very interested in reaching out to any stakeholders, anybody who's involved in working in and around railroads and have an interest in rail safety. Okay.
So what made you want to become, when I reached out to them, it sounded like you were, I don't know if they have this, but it was like you were the national spokesman person for Operation Lifesavers. What made you want to become so active and in such an active role?
Honestly, I had no intention of setting out to become active in this. This has completely happened by accident. The whole genesis of this obviously was getting that studio in the historic railroad building. But also, I had a client who saw the tracks and they were like, "Oh, wouldn't it be so cool to do our pictures right there?" And I had to start researching it to figure out what kind of permits I needed to do that. Because I had no clue that it probably wasn't a good idea. Literally, the tracks pass within like 10 steps from my front door of the studio. It's that close. So it's a major feature that my clients see as soon as they walk, as soon as they come into the studio.
And these are active tracks?
They're the most active tracks in the state, and I think in the top 5 active tracks in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's the major line. It's the major line that connects DC to Baltimore and New York and Florida. So everything goes on this line.
Yeah, so your clients can't miss it.
No.
Now, there's no fencing between your property and the tracks?
Literally none.
Wow.
It's like you can walk out of your car and walk 3 steps and you're smack right at the tracks.
Holy moly.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
So you looked for to get whatever permits you needed to get, and what did you find?
I looked for some permit information, in part because in Maryland and DC and Virginia, you need a permit. You need to pay for a permit to photograph almost anywhere outdoors. So I figured there would be some sort of payment required to somebody. And I discovered that actually it's illegal everywhere, always, every time. There's no possible way to do it legally, not for an active track, for sure. And rather unfortunately, within that same month, a young man actually died on that track steps from my studio because he was, So, I mean, that just, it was a blow, and his mom is in the area and everything, and there's a memorial set up for him that's still there to this day. And his friends are there regularly. It's heartbreaking because I see it every day when I'm going to work. But sometimes his family will sit out there with a cup of coffee in the morning and spend time with the place he last was. So with all of that happening at the same time, encountering this fatality, this tragic death at the same time that I was looking into this, it kind of drove home the message that this was not something to fool around with.
Is this the article? Is this the person?
That is one of them. There's actually, in the time that I've been in my studio, there has been 4 different deaths in Maryland alone for people that were on the tracks involved with taking pictures. So that's just in the last almost 4 years. And they're almost always young people who just don't know otherwise. They've grown up around train tracks. And like many of us who have grown up around tracks, we're kind of relaxed about it. And, we tend to think when we're young that we're invincible anyways.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's a cool thing because others are doing it. So these teens are out there seeing that professional photographers are doing it. So yeah, we're going to take some selfies on the tracks.
So looking at that photo of that kid, that kid looks like he's about the age of my youngest boy. So that's hard to look at that photo and realize that person's no longer with us, and what their parents must be going through after that.
He was from graduating.
He's what?
He was taking graduation pictures with his girlfriend. Yeah. His girlfriend survived. And he did.
That is about the age of my youngest kid. Yeah, he's a senior in high school. That's just awful. But you look at that kid. I think what a lot of them feel, I know we've heard enough in our Facebook group, is that kid looks fit, healthy. How on earth could he get run over by a train? Just run away, not run forward. Just run to the side, get off the way. So. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, if you're not in at a corner, or if you're not where maybe there's a lot of commotion going on with trains going both ways, how does someone get run over? Because I think a lot of people feel, look, that's people who get run over, they're always drunk, or they're on a bridge or something where they can't get away.
Right. There's a reason, right?
Yeah. There's something they did wrong, and that thing that did wrong was not being on train tracks. It's something else that contributed to it. Could you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
So there's a few things involved in this. One is physics. So you would literally have to be a marathon sprinter to the level of like Bolt to be able to outrun a train, even if it's going super slow. most rail crossings, the trains will go anywhere from 25 miles to maybe 40 at the most. We don't exactly have high-speed trains in America.
Mm-hmm.
However, we also don't have long stretches of track where you can see the train coming from miles and miles away. So the first issue is that even though you think you can see it in enough time, being at track level messes with your depth perception. So you may think that you have longer distance. It's kind of like looking in the mirrors on your car when they have that warning.
Yeah.
Objects in the mirror appear closer, So your depth perception is messed up when you're at track level, in part because of all the other visual cues that are around you, the leading lines, all those things that photographers love so much.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't perceive properly. You cannot hear properly, because the sound of the train follows the train in behind. It doesn't come ahead of you. So you don't get advanced warning the train is coming. That's why they have a whistle on these things, because it's hard to hear them. The sound waves follow and trail behind the train. So that's another area you don't have warning on. You also, because there's not a long lead time usually, you don't have that forewarning to be able to move fast enough. If you do move fast enough, you may trip over things. You can't predict that.
Mm-hmm.
Then even if you manage to clear the tracks, if somehow you are like Bolt level of speed and you're an amazing sprinter and super fit and you can gather all your gear and your clients and everything else, you manage to get over the tracks. Just like that young man we just saw in that picture you'd posted there. He was running from the tracks. He was running from the train. He was trying to escape. His girlfriend had a head start and was able to run a little bit further, but she was just barely out of the slipstream. So as a train goes by, it can suck you back because of the speed. You can feel it when you feel a transport truck on the highway, right? Your car shakes a little bit.
Right.
That's because of that slipstream that happens. So you weigh a heck of a lot less than a train.
Yeah.
That train passing you can suck you in if you're close enough.
Is that what happened to him, or did he not even make it that far?
Yes.
Oh.
That's what happened to him. So he thought he was in the clear, and he didn't. His girlfriend literally watched him.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
And now a train also overhangs the track too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you can't judge that because each train, depending on their cars and the engine and all that sort of stuff, you don't know what that overhang is. So you may think you're in the clear and then, get caught and pulled under.
Yeah.
That's grim.
That is. It is. I mean, it's a serious subject. Seeing that, I wanted to show that photo. I didn't want to show any after photos or anything, but seeing a person there, when you show that young boy, and I take it that was his girlfriend, and they were there for their senior photos or whatever. Seeing that, you put a face on it. That now you see that young boy who had the rest of his life ahead of him, and know that he's not with us anymore, and he's not alone. So this was a senior photo shoot.
It was. That young man's parents have been thankfully very open and proactive about trying to educate people about what happened and why. He wasn't, by all accounts, he was very bright. He was very intelligent. He was not a daredevil. He didn't, wasn't a major risk taker. This was not it wasn't, something he was doing on a lark or trying to, make a statement or anything. It was just fun, kids having fun. And you don't think about this sort of thing when all you want to do is get a cool picture.
Did was it a professional photographer or a family friend photographer or something like that?
I believe it was his girlfriend.
Oh, the girlfriend was a photographer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she was.
Because, once we bring in, let's say a professional photographer, some professional photographer out there, or Tim and I, who are amateurs, who are doing this for a favor, or maybe for one-time fee. We're not pros, but we did this on a weekend. Whatever. There, if someone gets injured, or in this case, killed, that could be a real problem for the photographer, couldn't it?
There's some big ramifications for us as business owners. Our insurance, even if by some miracle we got off the track, we managed to escape, we got off there, and maybe we dropped a lens, or we left our camera behind because we were more concerned about ourselves. Our insurance isn't going to cover that because we were committing an illegal act. It's illegal to be at that space, that time. So insurance is going to say, well, too bad.
Yeah.
You got hit by a train. Good luck.
Yeah.
So there's that risk. You can also run the risk because your business has literally committed an illegal activity. You run the risk of not being covered for insurance again, which if you have a studio or you're a wedding photographer and you need that liability coverage when you're on location and things like that, that can seriously cramp your business for the next
ever
several years, forever.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the insurance aspect is one. Some locations require that you have a business license to operate as a business, and that if your business has done anything illegal, you obviously don't get a license, so you can't even operate as a business. So yeah, it has ramifications for the professionals beyond just the morals and ethics of it and the safety and everything else.
Yeah. Pam
It could also be subject to fines too.
Or arrest.
Obviously, it's illegal. So depending on how the law enforcement and the folks kind of monitor it in your area, you could have higher incidences of that. Fines can be anywhere. The ones near my studio, I could be fined up to $5,000 and 30 days in jail.
Yeah. So, I'm, this, like I said, this is a controversial subject, and Pam, who's out in chat, this is a passion of hers. This topic she's passionate about this topic. And she mentioned that, often the other side just says, just mind your own business, stay away from this.
Sure.
I'll do what I want to do. And, for those people, and maybe we can't convince you, maybe, Kat or I or Pam can't convince you that you can't run away from the train. You're looking at that picture of that boy, maybe he needed to just run 10 feet one direction, he's out of the way. But what if, let's say he's doing that, he runs out of the way, and in the process, he falls down and scrapes up, and maybe, on those rocks, there's a lot of rocks there. He could have broken an arm, injured himself. And even in that scenario where it's not going to be a life-threatening injury, if he injures himself, then sues you, and in the process you were doing something illegal, your insurance may not cover you. So you could all walk away not being arrested, not being fined, not being dead, and still, your business could be destroyed. Why would you put your business at that kind of risk? A normal business person would not put their business at this one photo shoot could destroy my entire business.
Yeah. That's a level of risk that I couldn't put my family through.
Yeah. No. Most businesses are avoid risk. So are you going to make enough profit from this photo shoot to cover the potential risk? That's risk reward analysis.
The other argument I see a lot is, I know these people, we're friends, or this is my family. And I absolutely believe that. That's fine. But are they still going to be that friendly when they're facing $500,000 in hospital bills or something?
No, they won't, because at that point they're saying, who's going to pay?
Yeah.
And Pam brings up another good point. So she says, I'm going to read it here as well as I can, Pam. People don't realize this affects not just the victim and their family, but also the train crew. Many crew members may never get back in the cab of a locomotive after an incident. And that was what they did for a living. So now they got to go find a new form of living, new way to make money. So it's, they lived through it. They weren't injured, most likely. But now their entire family is affected.
I spoke when I was in Texas. I spoke to one gentleman who he had been trying to talk to me for a few hours, kind of skirting around, and I could tell he was trying to work up the nerve to come. And in a quiet moment, he was able to do so, and kind of took me aside into a corner, and he had tears in his eyes, and he said he can't thank me enough for being aware of this, because he was one of those conductors. Conductor is probably the wrong name, but one of those train operators who did hit somebody, and he has PTSD. His life is ruined. His family is ruined. He cannot function as a normal adult anymore because of what he experienced. I mean, it's graphic. You've got a bird's eye view of that when you're up in the cab, and that's all you see. And the guilt is just horrific. And that encounter with him really solidified in my mind the need to help others realize that this is not just you that you're risking here.
Yeah, I think if you're that person, if you're in the train, the conductor, the engineer, whatever, I don't know what they call them, but or someone that's in there, you know what's happening when you hit something.
Yeah.
And it's continuing to happen because you can't stop on a dime. I mean, they don't, we
it
drive.
Can take you miles to stop.
We drive on the road.
Right, you got a big freight train with 1,000 cars behind it. It's going to take several miles for it to stop.
Yeah.
And you hear it every once in a while. I mean, I have commuter railroads up here in New York, and you have somebody that steps in front of a locomotive for a passenger train, and that engineer is right there. It's it's from here to my computer screen. They see it, and it's devastating. It is absolutely and they don't think about it. I mean, you're going to kill yourself, and you've just destroyed somebody else's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you imagine being panicked, even if you had a long stretch of track and you saw for like 2 miles that there was something on the track up there? Can you imagine the panic you must feel for 2 miles as you try to stop this barreling freight train behind you to avoid whatever's coming?
And then you got to worry. Now you have another mile or two after that where you still weren't able to stop.
And
now, what happened? Was there somebody even in the vehicle when that happened?
Exactly.
Or because you see cars that get hit and people try to beat a crossing gate? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the sounds and all that kind of stuff is just, you're right. It's PSTD, like you said, PTSD.
PTSD.
So in addition to talking, you've also wrote a couple of articles on your website. One of them being, let's scroll the wrong thing. One of them being 10 reasons to just say no to photography on railroad tracks.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Photographers like our lists, don't we?
We love lists. Yes, we love lists.
So this actually came about because I had people asking me if they could rent my studio in order to photograph on the tracks. So I ended up having to write the darn thing just to show others locally about this. And it kind of went among the photographer community a little bit viral. And it's often shared around as in discussions like on your site. In discussions, it's often used as a resource for others who are trying to educate photographers. So the list is born out of what I learned when I was talking to Operation Lifesaver, what I learned talking to my local law enforcement, as well as my insurance company, all the research that I was doing to educate myself, I kind of dumped into one spot so others can use it as a resource. 10 main reasons. We spoke about several of them already. It's always illegal. That's something that's contested a lot. A lot of photographers say, well, it's not in my city. It's always illegal. Tracks are always on private property. If it's an active track, it is not legal for you to be on it for photographing without permit. Now, sometimes Hollywood, for instance, can get a permit, but they literally have to stop everything on that rail line, and that costs big bucks. You're stopping all commerce, all movement on that rail line for safety purposes. So to get a permit to do it is possible. Rail companies want to work with professionals who want to do that, obviously, but it's not something the average high school senior photographer or family photographer is going to be doing very successfully.
Yeah.
So the rest of the points on the just the 10 reasons one of them that's also brought up frequently is that photographers have First Amendment rights and can go anywhere and everywhere to photograph.
Really? So
try that one.
Try that one out. So
if you think about that for a second, if that's what you really think, try going in someone's house and start taking photos. Just walk in their house.
That's going to be good.
Yeah, and see what happens there. You know, if you make it out alive, you're probably going to be arrested. And the same here. It's somebody owns that property. There may not be a house.
I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
You can use the reason, and it does apply for many things, that you do have access as a photographer that the average person would not if you are a journalist.
Right.
If you are actually going to be selling this to a publication for a legitimate news gathering activity, then yes. But even the journalists are smart enough to go to the railroad and say, hey, I'm going to be here at this time. And is there any dangers I need to worry about?
Yeah. You also mentioned in this article that if you take photos, let's say you take your singing photos, you came out alive, nobody was injured, you did that, you post them on social media, post them on your website and everything, that the train, I hate to call them trained people, trained industry, the trained industry is actively monitoring the internet and looking for those things, and they may require you to take them down.
Yes, it's private property, so they can apply. They can certainly request it. They can, depending on what it is. Some jurisdictions, I'm told, they can work with law enforcement to have it removed because it is an illegal activity. This is another point that people contest a lot. Nobody can force me to take my pictures down. It's been done. It's something that they are very conscious of because kids, especially new photographers, high school seniors, they don't know whether somebody's, a professional who's dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and got a permit, Hollywood level permit, or whether it's just a cool thing that somebody down the street did. Anybody who looks professional is cool. So they don't know the difference. And the rail companies are aware of this, and they want to help combat new people, new children, and new photographers from jumping in on doing this because they see it online with no context.
Yep. So we talked about that one boy who died, and I think you mentioned someone else. How many people are actually dying every year from this? I mean, is this something that is still happening on a regular basis?
It's really hard to track that because if there's a death on a track, it's literally, it shows up in the news usually as just death on the track. You don't always see death on a track because of photography in the news article. But I do have a link to a lot of news stories in the news on that article that you were talking about on my website. They have statistics. There's at least 71 people who have been injured or killed in just Virginia, D.C., Maryland, the DMV area that I'm in, since January 2014. That's just my area. That's not even across the country. There's no stats in that. I can't break it down further and say, X number of people were there specifically for photography purposes. They just keep a global set of stats by that.
Yeah. One thing Pam mentions that railroad police are sworn law officers just like your local police force. And I'll have to include this in our show notes. She has a couple articles that she was inspired to write. I think she loves your articles and has written some of her own on this whole thing.
Oh, great.
So, all right. So we all know that it's dangerous, something we shouldn't do. It is, can put our entire business at risk and our life at risk. But there's, they're so attractive in what they do. So what message would you say to a photographer? What is their options? What could they do? Are there any dormant tracks that are specifically set up to let people do something like this? Or is that people who see those photos want to understand how they were done, and that puts that at, other people at risk, so you don't even want to do that? What are the options for the photographer?
That's often when you see these discussions taking place in photographer groups, usually people will jump in and say, oh, well, this one's a dormant one. It hasn't been used in 2 or 3 years or something. Um, the casual observer cannot determine whether a track is actually dormant or not. Just because you haven't seen a train in the last 2 years does not mean it's officially declared dormant.
Right.
That is an actual status that the rail company needs to do. The only dormant tracks that there are ones that are not connected on either end. It's a short stretch, a mile or two, just for just either for aesthetic purposes or because it's a bit of history, or it just costs too much to pull it out, so they've just left it.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a dormant track if it's declared that way by the rail company and it's not connected on either end. You can't possibly put anything on that track. So rail museums are one spot where you might see that. On the grounds of the rail museum, they might have an engine or a caboose or a car, a rail car on a stretch of track. So if your client is really adamant, maybe the little kid is, huge train fan and they really want to include trains in their shoot somehow. If you do it at a rail museum, you have the safety, you have the aspect of the trains, you can use those leading lines that photographers love and everything, all those things that make trains attractive and make it a cool experience for the kid, while still being safe, promoting your local museum, which is cool educationally, and just in general helping your local industry stay away from that. We find that the more we show images on tracks, the more people want to do it. And how images spread online. They're pinned on Pinterest. All the context is gone. So you can't even caption something and say, this was done safely because we did X, Y, Z, and because no trains were here this day or whatever. All of these kind of solutions that people present as a way to fix the bad that can happen is kind of obliterated when it comes to how images are shared. It's just the image, the end result.
Okay, Pam posted something out here in chat. She says, in 2014, 526 deaths and 419 injuries resulted from trespassing on railroad property, with an additional 213 suicide deaths and 40 injuries from failed suicide attempts on railroad property.
That sounds like the last stats I saw, yeah.
Yep. In comparison, there were only 2 deaths and 126 injuries resulting from derailments and vehicle train collisions in 2014. So I think most of us think that that's where people are dying. Their car conks out on the railroad tracks. Somehow they can't open the doors and run away, and boom, they're dead. And that's where most of the deaths happen from train tracks. And from what she just posted there, there's very few of those that actually happen. Most of it is what we've been talking about tonight.
Exactly. I think those 2 were actually on this rail line that's by my studio in 2014. It was 2 young ladies who were sitting on a rail overpass in Ellicott City, a city that's really close to us, and it's a bridge where people often sit. They're sitting there taking pictures, and the train derailed. I'm not entirely sure how that happened, but a whole coal car dumped over on them.
Oh my gosh.
And they're on a bridge, so nowhere to go.
Yeah, nowhere to go. Yep.
Yeah.
Something else Pam had here. This is, we talked about this in a pre-show, but this is not everywhere, but this is the sign that you can look for if you ever do see an emergency around a train track. It's this nice big blue sign that has the emergency number, not this specific number I'm showing here, whatever number is on the sign where you're at. If you have any kind of emergency, or let's see. If you have any kind of emergency, to look for that sign. Hopefully you'll never have to deal with that.
Hopefully.
I understand those signs are going to be posted more frequently, increasingly across the country. It's all part of the effort to educate folks about what to do.
Very good. My camera's going really strange. Y'all seeing that? I'm moving.
Every once in a while. Yeah, every once in a while I see it flicker out.
Yeah, we won't worry about that. It's as long as you can hear me fine. All right. So if you want to do these photos, to look for some kind of rail museum and do something there. And
Sure.
I think that somebody else had posted some. What about? I'm not going to find it out. Somebody had posted a photo here in our chat that was of. It looked like it was probably a senior photo. It wasn't on the train tracks. It was. I think it looked like they went maybe where there was a bend in the tracks, and they stood a safe distance away from the tracks, but you could see the train in the background coming around the corner. What are your thoughts on something like that?
It's definitely better, of course. The rail line would have to be the ultimate arbitrator of that. They have a specific distance that you need to be away from the track in different areas. So depending on the actual construction of the track, the material it's around, the visibility for the conductor, whether there's a bend in the track, whether there's a curve or whatever, there's all kinds of things that impact what the safe distance is. And that's why it's good to call the rail line and just say, hey, this is what we want to do. And, they're not ogres. They're not going to bite your head off because you want to include something that's kind of interesting to you. They'll work with you to find a way to do it safely. And that will be to tell you what the specified distance at that location is, because that can vary. It can change.
Yeah, the picture looks like he's about 15 feet off the track, off the side of the ballast. I mean, based on where the ballast is, it doesn't look like he's actually that far from the track.
Wait, what is it? What is a ballast? What?
That's the crushed rock you were talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. Generally, the crushed rock area is not a safe area.
Right,
No.
right.
Generally.
And it looks like he's right on the edge of it.
Yeah. So the best folks to talk to, they know the physics of that area. They know what kind of trains are going to be passing. They can even, I've heard from a couple rail lines, they said they have folks on their staff who are tasked with kind of like a public relations kind of thing. They can sometimes send somebody who's a rail expert out with you to make sure that you're operating and doing what you need to do safely. And it's not a big cost or anything to do that.
And I'm sure for them, the struggle is, of course, any promotion of rail photography, people want to push it and cross the line. So even that photo we just saw, let's assume, I don't know if it is, but let's assume it's fine and a railroad company would be fine with that. All right, that's good. Hey, next time, let's go a little bit closer. That would have looked much better if he'd have standing on the track, those kind of things. So I can see where I don't know, but if I'm them, I'm hesitant to encourage really any kind of photography around that.
Personally, from a personal perspective, I kind of take the stance that photographers have been there and done that. Yeah, there are so many other things you can do, other places you can go that will make a cool image. Why resort to something that's kind of cliche and frankly, not to be insulting to anybody, but it's something we kind of look at doing when we don't have other tools in our toolkit. It's easy because there's leading lines and it kind of makes the picture for us. And that's why it's a go-to kind of shot for certain photographers. It may be that you're learning about leading lines and perspective and things like that. So it's kind of cool to you. But as a professional, you have other options. You've got other cool things you can do to make your images interesting for your clients that are also safe.
Yep, agree. And I think in the end, if we can't convince you that you can't get off the track every time one comes, and that you shouldn't be there for that, because you don't want to kill or hurt somebody. Ultimately, what you should, as a photographer who's doing this. You're shooting another person. If you're going to be shooting another person, even if it's your own kid, but let's assume it's not any other person, you are risking your financial well-being by doing that.
Yeah.
Because if that person gets injured, your insurance may drop you and all that. And ask yourself if it's worth it. Would you do some other activity to, financially ruin yourself? For the rest of your life, potentially?
Well, one of the things I tell my students in the state here, we've got the I-95 major highway. Would you stand your client in the middle of the I-95?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right, Kat, that's awesome. A lot of great stuff here. We had it, I think, fortunately, everybody in the chat was this wasn't as controversial as it could have been. And I know if you take the other side on this topic, just think about that thing I said at the end. Is the reward worth the risk?
Mm-hmm.
I think Tim, you kind of do risk reward stuff for a living in your job.
It's not. I mean, and not even just the financial part about it. Could you live with yourself?
Yeah, that's the
if
other
somebody
part
you were
too.
photographing and they got injured or killed as a result of this. I mean, could you even live with yourself? I
No.
can't imagine it.
To bring this back home for me personally, my son, the youngest one I just talked about, has been driving now for about 6 months. And I have driven in his head, when you go into a neighborhood, I don't care what the speed limit is, you drive slow, because you never know when some little kid is going to come running out in the street after their ball or whatever reason to run out in the street from behind a car. They're not thinking safety, they're just running. And if you hit that kid, you may have been totally in the right legally, but now you have to live with that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to think about here too. You may make it out financially, but if anything were to happen, you have to live with that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
All right. Would love to have been there. Okay. That's Tim's comment. I'm reading some of the chat comments before we head into the last part, because we're coming into the landing here, Kat. And one of the things we like to do is talk about what's in your camera bag. So what's in Kat's camera bag? And I know you have a whole studio there, which we looked at some of your photos. But what do you have in your camera bag?
As little as possible. Since I have a studio, then I only have to carry the absolute essentials with me. So being a kid photographer, for most of what I do, little toys.
Oh, awesome.
Little things to distract. So Minions, very popular right now. Because of where we are in Maryland, a good can of Off is always needed.
Down here in Georgia too?
Yeah. We have these, and the Off wipes are really cool. We've also started using, for some of our shots, maternity shots especially, just because you got to do something to make those interesting. Atmosphere aerosol is kind of cool. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, we saw somebody else had that once. Yes.
What is it? What is that again? What is atmosphere aerosol?
It's a can of fog, basically.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Add some side lighting to it, or some gelled light, and you can get this whole misty, foggy kind of effect behind your clients, which is kind of cool.
I gotta buy some of that and just do it here on the show when I walk in.
It's super affordable. It's like $9 for a can, and you can go through like 2 or 3 shoots with a can. So
awesome.
It's pretty cool. And the other thing we added just recently to our kit is a series of refracted lenses of various sorts: prisms, concave, convex lenses. They're used in microscopes and telescopes and things like that. But you can actually use it to create some interesting film-like light effects by using it in front of your lens as you're photographing. Shoot through them, use it to shine light through and direct the visual effects.
Do you have different sizes to fit different lenses, or?
Yeah, you can, and different degrees of curve to it. A prism will give you a different kind of light pattern. You can make a rainbow right across it just by playing with the refraction of the light through the prism, and just something different to break it up and create a cool shot.
And then you just hold it in front of the lens with your fingers, or do you have some other way to mount it?
We do. I know other photographers who have built themselves like a little holder of some sort for some of these cool tools. But it's not necessary. You're not photographing edge to edge with it. You're just using it to add a little extra something.
And where would you get something like that?
I actually got this as a set of 3 on Amazon for like $5.99.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's high level optic level glass. It's the same stuff they use in telescopes and microscopes, and it just creates some cool effects. Play with it. I mean, you can waste an entire Saturday afternoon just playing with this stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. Well, thank you, Kat, for sharing what's in your bag. I love hearing about new things that people use that we have not heard from before. Very good.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. So as we wrap this up, I want to go over, we have, if you don't mind hanging out with us for just a little bit longer here, Kat.
Sure.
We have the 3 finalists from the October photo contest here, and we'll go over the first one. This one is from, I'm not going to critique them. We're just going to show them. Bev Nelson Robson. We have that one. Then we have this one from Brad Morse. And the other finalist was from Debbie Henry with this image. And I will tell you that it was very close. The voting was very close. We had 6 or 7 people who, the admins who did the voting this month. And let me bring us back to us. Hold on. They did the voting this month, and with all that voting in all the different categories, I think it came down to just a 2-point spread, which is really close.
Which I think is the closest we've ever had.
That is very close, yes. But the final winner by a 2-point spread was Bev Nelson Robson with this image of the leaves. The theme for the month was fall colors. So congratulations, Bev. We'll be posting this in the Facebook group here as soon as I have a chance to do all that. Congratulations.
And if I remember correct, this was one of the ones where she described what it was. She was taking a picture upwards because you could see the sky behind it. This wasn't leaves hanging down. She was pointing straight up as she took this picture.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't realize that at first.
Almost didn't realize it until
I did.
You read it. So that's why it's good.
I did not realize it at first. Yep. All right, that's it for tonight. If like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is the last show we'll be doing for November. We'll be back in December. My dog just came down here and was begging me to go out. If you came in late and want to catch the show or want to just re-listen to it because of all the awesome information, you can catch the audio version on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podomatic, Podbean, and Google Play Music. The video portion is on iTunes, YouTube, and Vimeo, and usually out on iTunes first. No, I'm sorry, out on YouTube first. Usually out on YouTube first. So, and don't forget to join the contest for this month. This is a fun one. You know, often these things, like we saw just one from Bev, you know, you can tell it's a DSLR that's taking the photos and all that kind of stuff. But this month, because of the topic and whatever, you know, cell phone cameras will probably even be good for this topic. And it's really got me looking. I'm looking everywhere. I cannot find something I want to shoot yet. But come out there and join the group and get your photo entered for this month. Next month, we do start the Best of the Year contest. I've already showed these 2 things. We already have the Adobe Creative Photography Plan, Photoshop, and Lightroom 1-year prepaid subscription. So one person will be getting that. We also have an Amazon gift card. We'll be getting more of those to be handed out for the contest this year. So be looking for that post. So until December. And have a good, if you're in the United States and you celebrate Thanksgiving, have a great Thanksgiving. I know I will. Until then, we'll see you in December. Keep it raw. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.